Welcome back to Good Morning La La. We are talking all things Transformation Tuesday, and we are talking about girls today. We're talking about being moms and transforming women into powerful, strong young ladies into women. We're talking to Wendy Snyder. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you.
You are a positive parenting teacher, family coach. You help parents and families create purposeful, intentional, healthy, respectful, and cooperative relationships. I love that. And you're a certified parent educator. RCB. Tell us, what is that exactly?
Yeah, so RCB stands for Redirecting Children's Behavior, and it's one of the two programs that I teach. So the other one's called The Joy of Parenting, and it's positive parenting curriculum. And so when I created my company, FreshStartFamilyOnline.com, I wanted to support busy families who want to learn more about positive parenting curriculum and how it can just transform their life and their relationship with their kids. But they're busy. So, yeah.
The world needs your
my
work.
gosh.
I mean, are you kidding
gosh,
me? I mean, just right now, I see families sometimes, I'm like, oh, they're yelling at their kids right now. Like, do they know what their subconscious, how it gets programmed? I'm like, oh no.
I'm not a parent yet, but I'm wondering, when does this parenting lessons begin? I mean, is this pre-children? Is this when you have children? When do you even begin?
Great question.
Yeah, so I always say the FreshStartFamilyOnline.com vision is pre-baby, right? So to get this work out to like college 101 classes and even high school, right? But the mission right now is to support the families who really need support. But yeah, the dream is to get this in the work, get this in the hands of every family before they end up what we call in crisis, which is when you have a wild toddler or a strong-willed little soul that you're just like, what the heck, and most of us just work with what we inherited, which sometimes works and sometimes you just want to do it the way you choose. And so nowadays we have all these options. It's just beautiful.
What was your journey into becoming a parenting coach?
Oh my goodness. So I found the work of positive parenting in a really dark spot of my parenting journey. So I had a little 3-year-old little girl who came out of the womb just a firecracker, really strong personality. And I didn't quite have the tools to know how to work with her. And so the first few years were rocky. And I realized that I needed some help. And so when I found this work and I found these courses, it just changed everything for me. And all of a sudden I was able to see the light and the integrity in her. And the cool thing was that she responded. When we worked with her in a more compassionate and grace-filled and empathetic manner, where we really tried to just seek to understand her instead of trying to judge her and control her, she just blossomed. And you could tell she was like, yes.
So walk us through that. So say you're in the kitchen, you're parenting, your 3-year-old daughter is screaming and throws her fork across the, what do you do? What's the protocol?
So we really coach parents. And I always say that I'm right there in the work with my families that I coach. So I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old. So we're all a work in progress, but we want to move from reactive parenting to responsive parenting, where you're just like from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds, 2 seconds really. And normally we say there's not much a space there between the stimulus and the response. So we just want to get better, and it takes practice, but really taking a pause button, or we call it a heart connector, and just taking a moment to think about how you want to handle the fork being thrown or what you want to teach your little girl in the long term. It's not always about just right in that minute. But it's more like, what are we teaching our kids long term? And what are we modeling for them when we react or when we respond?
Well, and you've got some great tips on dealing with these everyday interactions with your daughters to reframe that in a way that's positive. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So number one, we really want to teach our young girls, all of our young kids, but the earlier the better with them all, is how to really understand emotional intelligence and understand what they're feeling and how to work through feelings with integrity. So when she's crying and she's having a tantrum or a fit or whatever, we want to just take a break from the like, stop it, you're fine, stop crying, and just start to teach her, become a teacher, and start to teach her, well, this is what you're feeling. It's usually, hurt, sad, scared when they're maybe crying, and just start to help them understand that it's okay to feel those things and how you can get through them with integrity. Because a lot of times in culture we label those as bad emotions, and then we become adults who aren't set up to handle those emotions. But really they're just a part of life.
I have infinite gratitude for you. You have no idea. Carl, I remember Carl Jung said somewhere essentially that his job as a psychologist was to reparent people at an age in which reparenting was impossible.
Yeah.
And you are helping out that mission so much that you're actually, giving people this solid foundation in emotional intelligence, in empathy, and being non-reactive and non-defensive. And by doing that, you're not, I think a lot of challenges that parents have is they don't realize that when you're acting from that very defensive or sort of worked up place, you're actually pouring gasoline on the fire, right? And so you're teaching them behaviors that aren't adaptive.
Yeah, they're just, it's like a dance. We get into a dance with our kids. So they end up being the greatest teachers if we allow them to, right? If we lean into the vulnerability side, which we always say is a strength. Vulnerability and learning and growing and humbling yourself and saying, oh my gosh, I don't know the answer here, is actually will allow you to grow alongside your kids.
So is that one of the best parts of our places to start with just pausing? Like when you're in when the heat of the moment and your little one's having a meltdown.
Yeah.
The first thing you should do is pause, is that?
Absolutely, and we always say if you can add a hand on your heart and just remind yourself to parent from your heart instead of from your head, because our head will take us to places that aren't always the most healthiest behaviors, but our heart will guide us, right? It's what signifies life, right? It's the first thing we have that signifies life is when you see a heartbeat, and it's the last thing that signifies life too. So it's just right that we would use it to guide us in our parenting as we're raising little souls. So that's a huge part. I know all of the families that I work with, and they always want to know, well, then what do we do? And so it's just a journey. You have to you have to get into the curriculum. You have to find some coursework. I have 2 different programs on the website that help families really understand all the different strategies that they can use after they start to take that pause button. But it really starts a little bit with the theory and understanding misbehavior as communication instead of just our kids are being naughty, they're out to get us. But the psychology that the work is based on really helps us to understand it as communication. And then we become detectives instead of police officers for our kids.
I love that. I mean, I think this is the most brilliant thing, so needed. It's amazing. I remember I was a very young mother. I was 22 when I had my son, and I don't have the consciousness now that I had then by any means, but I do remember reading one thing that really helped me in my parenting, and it was something to the extent of pick your battles. So I remember watching parents, and they would say, they'd be in a store and the kid would be grabbing for candy bars, and the kid would be like, I want this, and the mom would go, no, you can't have that, no, you can't have that. And by the 3rd time you said, I want it, she'd go, okay, just have it. And that is not gonna work very well. So I remember thinking, pick your battles, and that was the one kind of thing that worked for me. I remember that. What do you say about that? How do parents say no in a day when there's so much consumption, online, gaming? How do you say no in a positive, conscious way?
I love that you asked that, because a lot of people will hear the word positive parenting and they'll think it's permissive work, right? But so much of what I work to support parents and families with is how to stay firm in their nose. So we always say this work guides families to be firm and kind. And so it's important that we set boundaries and stick to rules, and that we say no to the crazy, artificially dye candy at the end of the aisle. So we have a little formula that we teach parents. It's, proactive agreements is huge. So you always want to teach your kids in a calm time, not in the heightened when you're at the end of the aisle. And then right when they start to push back or ask, you just go right to empathy. That's number 2. And then you ask them to restate the agreement, what you've taught them about why we don't want to put that in our body. And then the last step, number 4, is our little formula is you give them choices. And so make it fun, make it playful.
I'm still trying to parent myself. It's not working out so well.
I'll be honest, isn't that I would imagine that's the core of it, is that you have to be able to, what I love about your approach is that, of course, it's really geared for kids, but it actually applies, all the principles apply to just any kind of relationship that you have with any other human being on the planet, right?
So
including
true.
the one you have with yourself.
Definitely yourself.
Yes, there's so much self-love that comes into it. As parents, it's we can get really hard on ourselves because culture just doesn't support us. We just aren't usually, again, we go into it with what we've inherited, and then a lot of times we just don't feel confident. So you can really, really be hard on yourself at the end of the day. So I love supporting families with that too. It's this is grace-filled work. We're grace-filled with our kids. We're grace-filled for ourselves. And then through the learning and the growing, you learn to just love yourself a little bit more and say, I'm human.
Oh my God,
it's okay.
you heal the world.
I know, right? Seriously. Sugar. That's all I got to say.
Yay.
So where can people find your work and work with you?
Yeah, so my website is freshstartfamilyonline.com, and it's a really good time. They can come in and get on a free 5-day challenge that I have that starts June 1st. It's right on the homepage. The registration page is right there. And that'll give parents 5 days of mini positive parenting lessons where they can get to know the work a little bit in really digestible, little small lessons, and also be in community. Right now we have almost 500 people in the private Facebook group where people just get to come in and say, oh my gosh, me too. I'm struggling. I need help. I have a humble heart, but I'm struggling here and I want to learn. And then on Instagram, I'm at Fresh Start Wendy.
I love that. Oh, such beautiful divine work. So important. Thank you for everything, really and truly.
Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Stay tuned. We'll be back with more on Good Morning La La Land.